Pam comes, she can join in. If not, she not. I don't know.
We get to see Steve. Hi, Steve.
So you fixed the problem, Steve.
Steve, hi.
All right. So I invited Jean here tonight for two reasons. Number one is Jean did a great job. Oh, and Christine's not here either. Wow.
Yeah, I said where Christine, where's Christine?
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I invited Jean here because she had done a really good job of evaluating the territory with, that was back, I think, end of October for planning and zoning, because there was a request for a zoning change. And so she came up with some really good points to make. And so that was presented to planning and zoning, which I think helped. So I think some of you in reviewing that had some questions about that. So I thought this would be an opportunity to do that. And the other thing is that the town has approved of the healthy watershed, Natchog watershed system. And so there's a lot there that people may have questions about, or information that she can pass on to us that can be helpful for us as we move through, because Janet tells me they're going to be rewriting the regs for the town. So this could be helpful for us to have input into what's going on. And Janet is someone who sits in both commissions. So it's helpful to her too. So that was my purpose in doing this, and glad you're all here. And maybe Jean, you can just start out and telling us a little bit about the plan, and then go from there, and we'll take questions whenever.
Thank you for inviting me. I had not heard the town had adopted the plan. I had a conversation with your
Catherine?
yes,
Silversmith?
yes, and she was of the opinion she wanted to see the copy of the plan, and I can't distribute it till DEEP is finished working their end of it. And I had a tight deadline, but they keep extending their deadline, and they still haven't finished their part. So she wanted to see it before she adopted it. So to my knowledge.
Okay, so maybe that I misunderstood, because she had checked with all of the commissioners, the chairs, to see what we thought, and everyone said, go right ahead. So I just assumed that had happened, but it's now that everything is closed at the town hall, a lot of times we don't hear what's happening or whatever, but yeah, probably that's true. There hasn't officially been, but I don't anticipate there would be much of a problem.
Non-regulatory and cost-effective approach to preserving the healthy qualities of the Natchog watershed, which of course includes the Mount Hope and the Benton Rivers as well. So there was a big process that we went through, a series of stakeholder meetings, which were impacted by COVID, like everything else has been. So as much as I wanted to have the meetings in person so that people can collaborate and do your, I could say something and you could think that's a really good point. But I think if somebody next to you has a look on their face that that's really a good point, that reinforces that it's really good. Right. I didn't have any of that available to me. But it is a plan, and it focuses on steps that can be done to preserve the watershed. And basically it's a 75% forested watershed, and it's so healthy because of that. Focusing on forest preservation is a key component of the plan, but the riparian areas along the stream banks, if you can't preserve all the forests, at least preserve what you can along the stream banks, because that's a critical component of a healthy watershed as well. I have a PowerPoint presentation. It's really long. I could flip through it. If there's something somebody wants me to stop and talk about it, I can explain it. And then the development review checklist that I use to do your assessment, do the assessment of the proposed zoning change is something I really would like to see the town adopt. When it comes to reviewing new development for compatibility with the healthy watershed plan, that checklist is a way to do a natural resource inventory. And I even have links to all the maps you need to use to do that inventory. And then you make your decision based on those resources and which ones are most important, and hopefully keep your development out of those priority areas. Not saying don't develop, just choose where to develop accordingly. So, and I do have a copy of that checklist.
I don't think so.
I know it went out, but I can send it to you again. Let me make a note.
I think it was part of the packet, I think, that you sent us for the planning and zoning.
I believe I sent it out to as many contacts
Yeah,
I had within the towns. And there's also a following up with the checklist, which is your natural resource inventory. There's a second checklist. So when you're doing your development, you got to be thinking about stormwater runoff, because that's the source of all the pollution in the natural watershed. You don't have point discharge. You don't have pipes discharging into the brooks or streams. You're not supposed to anyway. And that low impact development checklist was originally developed by Mike Dietz for Mansfield in their special unit, that new downtown development area. But it's something that it makes really good sense. It doesn't say you have to do this, this, or this. It says, here is this. This is why you use it. Why aren't you using this one here? You know, and there's a lot of different options. But if everything is, we're not using this, then you say, well, we want you to redraw it because we want you to be compliant with the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual Low Impact Development Appendix. So you have this checklist that gives you all the different options you could use in your development design to reduce your stormwater impact. And so having the developer fill out this checklist, not the planning and zoning members, because it takes a couple hours to do it correctly. But if you have someone come in, they have to fill out the checklist. You have it, you look at it. Oh yeah, there's cold water streams. So let's pay attention to where this area is and keep the impacts away from that. Oh, there's a natural diversity database area of concern. We'll make sure that develop, you know, things that you don't have to go looking for stuff. They're going to have to present it to you, and all the maps they need to get that information is online now. So it's really good. So, I mean, it used to be you had to use paper maps. One thing that frustrates me is there's not one map you can use for your parcel maps. You have to go, you're in NECOG, right? Northeast Council of Governments. So you have to go there to get the parcel maps, and there's a little bit of natural resource information on that. But then there's this cold water stream area that's on the DEEP website. And then there's, you know, other ones you have to go to other websites. So, you know, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to figure everything out, but it's doable because I could do it. So, and it's like I said, it's a very good way to assess not just what the development value of a piece of property is, but what its natural resource values are. And how can you develop while maintaining those natural resource values to the best of your ability. You should, each of you should, when you get a copy of the checklist and look at all the map links, just pick a parcel and pretend you're doing it, and you'll kind of follow through how it works. And to be honest with you, that checklist is a modified checklist that the town of Woodstock uses already. And I helped write it for the town of Woodstock, and I added on to it because there are other things that I'm concerned about now. So, especially for a healthy watershed. So, you know, it's something that can be mandated as part of the application process to complete this checklist, and you hand it in with your development proposal. And so the members of the land use regulatory commissions can look at it as another piece of information. You can't assume that they didn't fill it out correctly, but if you wanted to go back in and take another look at it, like in the process in Woodstock is it has to be handed in with a development proposal, but then the Conservation Commission will look at the same development proposal and do their own assessment independently.
So Jean, you're saying in Woodstock, it's mandated that the developer has to fill out the checklist?
The earlier version of it, yes, we are asking them to change and update to the new checklist. Because there's new information that we didn't have when we made the first one, like cold water stream habitats and stuff. So it's, like I said, it's a way to call attention to the natural resources in your town and not just like say, well, they're not important, because I think we all believe they are.
Yeah, so it seems like what you're saying is some of the towns who are already doing it, some of the developers already have experience with this and know that that's what's going to be expected of them.
Correct.
terms
If
of
you're
what-
developing in Mansfield, you have to use the LID checklist. It's just one of their requirements. So it is, and nobody's like sued the town of Mansfield for that. And no one sued the town of Woodstock to make them do extra work. It's just a way of getting more information. And ideally that first checklist, the pre-development review checklist, is completed prior to any plans being drawn, because the plans should be drawn based on the results of the natural resource inventory. So it was really nice when you just gave me the parcels that were under consideration for the zoning change. And I just looked at it for its natural resource values. And I was able to report on those natural resource values without having any, predisposition of where the development would be, a lot of times they try to hand you something. Well, here's the thing. And I did the checklist. Well, if you did the checklist, you would never put that there. You wouldn't have that many wetlands crossings or whatever, that. So
Oh, do the towns require that for any development anywhere in town?
mostly for land use changes. So yes, Woodstock, we only have we don't have traditional zoning. We have residential with special permit for other uses. So everything goes through the process. So I know some of you were involved in at least one or two of the meetings while we were going through the NatJog Healthy Watershed planning process. And when we started to do them through Zoom, then we discovered we can record them. So any of the meetings that we had are now recorded and available on our YouTube channel. A year ago, if you told me I would be talking about our YouTube channel, I would have told you you were nuts. So, if you have questions you want me to answer, please ask them, or else I could just flip through the slides and maybe it'll start some conversation.
Well, I have kind of a personal question in that our property is on the Mount Hope River. So we have a long parcel that follows the river. And I'm often unsure what my role is in terms of, for example, maintaining the riparian areas or cleaning up my part of the river. For example, there was a deer that died and fell into the river. And, I don't know, am I supposed to pull the deer out? Am I supposed to know something about the scum that's building up in the river? Is there any guidance about what to keep and then try to get rid of on the bank of the river? Those are things that I would be just personally interested in, as well as probably a lot of the folks who live along any of the wetlands or the rivers themselves.
One of the workshops we did during the whole process was focused on riparian buffers and their values as not only a water filter, but as a wildlife corridor and whatnot. And maybe you'd like to watch that. Juliana Barrett from Sea Grant gave the presentation.
Yeah,
And,
actually, we did see that.
did see
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
but as a property owner, I wondered if there were specific guidelines that were available.
well, there's general rules about how wide you should maintain that riparian area. I know there's some places in the Hope where you can't go 50 feet, 100 feet. I mean, there's one lot I think of in Mansfield that the lot itself can't be 50 feet wide. And you could probably go fishing off the deck in the Mount Hope River. You know, the wider the better with the buffer, and keeping it natural with trees and native shrubs is the best option. And then there's different guidance. I can send you a nice booklet that was put together by Sea Grant. That might help too.
Because I think it would be useful for us, since the river does go through Ashford, to at least alert people living on the river about what their charge would be, because everybody who lives on the river enjoys the river and enjoys living on it, and I think would want to preserve it in the best way that they were able. So it's something as the Conservation Commission that I'd like to see us, you know, kind of.
And I'd love for you to
make
be
available.
promoting that. I would.
Yeah.
That's exactly the kind of role that I would like to see the Conservation Commissions take locally. The local people are going to have more trust with the other local people, and just explaining those things. Steve, remember when you rescued that wood turtle? You're muted. But we were out doing water quality monitoring, and Steve, there was a wood turtle in the road, and we stopped the car. He saw it and he jumped out and made sure it made it off the road. So wood turtles, Gwen, you were there too, weren't you? Yes. Wood turtles are known for living in those riparian areas. So keeping them suitable for their habitat is, you know, critically important. And we know that they're in Ashford because we caught one. You know, I saw one behind the town hall one day when I was looking for a riffle bioassessment access site. So there was a big one over by that giant boulder. I probably spend more time in the Mount Hope River behind your town hall than anybody else. But, yeah, those are the types of organisms that need that area as their habitat. And you can have your habitat and their habitat overlap without difficulties if you just understand what's important. There's a number of initiatives in the plan that are ideal for conservation commissions to pick up and go with. One of the ones I'm pushing in Woodstock, again, for those that don't know, I'm on the Woodstock Conservation Commission when I'm not working for the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District. So the Woodstock Conservation Commission started the Pollinator Pathway Initiative. Is anybody familiar with that?
Yeah, we're actually involved with that, and we've got a couple. We're hopeful that we'll be able to have two people who have gardens give a talk that people in the town can attend. Probably would have to be a Zoom depending on what happens with COVID.
Yeah, I've got to line up my speaker for this year. We had our big kickoff last year, and of course we had to cancel it and then do it by Zoom. And we had good attendance, and then we're not everybody from Woodstock, because I really don't think you can have a pathway that's inside your town. You need to continue to all the surrounding towns as well. But the premise of the Pollinator Pathway Initiative is to get people to voluntarily start planting more native flowers and shrubs on their property that will support the native pollinators. And there's hundreds of different types of pollinators that we have here that need to be, protected through providing them habitat opportunities. And I'm not talking about honeybees. I'm talking about native bees, butterflies, hummingbirds. There's a long list. And it's amazing the diversity of these organisms when you take the time to look for them. And I mean, this is a great project to do with schools, to get them involved. And it sounds like some things that the Ashford school is doing is pretty progressive when it comes to these things. They have a rain garden. I've just read something else about what the kids are doing there. So anyway,
They're doing anti-idling now. They've just had a little video that they created to tell people that, you know, idling is wrong and turn your car off and everything. There's these third graders who are talking about, you know, conservation issues. I found it quite fascinating.
And they have signs up at the school
that's
to not
great.
idle. So,
You always get that one teacher and you just love that teacher and you hope that person never retires. But so anyway, that's another initiative. But as we're going forward, as soon as I've got a big meeting next week for a different watershed, but I'm going to start organizing the natural, what do I call it? The Natural Healthy Watershed Advisory Board. That's like the biggest thing that has to come next, is to start getting a board together with representation from all 8 communities to look at the plan and look at the parts of the plan, develop work groups, come up with a kind of a schedule and start implementing these ideas. So for example, again, forests are a big component of this plan and forest preservation. And there's a lot of stuff that's already going on. So I think one of the first things you do is you make a forestry work group. They make a list of everything that's already going on. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel if it's something that's already working, find out what's missing and then start to, you know, attack that part and bring it online with what the goals are of the plan. Whether it's through forest management or, you know, improving forest health. I know you're very aggressive trying to work with forest landowners to get their land in conservation easements. Did you make progress on your forest legacy project application? I know you put one in.
It went in, it's still in process, you know, and what the deep person said, Dan, be prepared for it taking a long time. And it's a very slow process by the feds. So it's gotten approved. It just, they have to go through and assess all the lands and look at everybody's forest management plan and do all that. So it's in the works. It's just a very slow process. And apparently that's not unusual to have it take a long time. I mean, that's one of the things that Warren Church also said, that anything to deal with feds take quite a while.
Lois at the last Green Valley is going through that with their regional conservation partnership program, where they are working on getting forestry easements on large blocks of forest, millions of dollars worth of money going out in these easements, but the process is really slow. And you know, but you know, you have to start.
Right,
You'll never
and
finish
it's
if
a
you don't
problem
start.
because a lot of our forest legacy people are older individuals. So they're concerned. It's like, wait a minute, you know, is this going to happen in my lifetime kind of thing, you know? So
Yeah,
it's,
they're thinking about the island they were going to buy with their. I'm joking about that, but and yeah, like I said,
think Bill Reed is doing a whole program on having people talk about forest legacy, and they do have the forester that we had talking. I believe since it's Zoom now, it's easier to get people, and I think that's March 22nd. He's going to do that.
Okay. Yeah, Bill's a good guy. So like I said, there's a lot of initiatives in the forestry arena. Finding out what they are, listing them, and see what's missing. One of the key components that I keep hearing about is people with large forested areas are it's more attractive to go after them, but you can still have a large forest block, but there could be multiple owners of that land within the block. And they don't think of the forest in their backyard as a forest. They think of it as their woods, because they don't own the whole thing. So that's a big effort. New England Forestry Foundation's been working on getting people to become more familiar with their woods and how to keep it healthy. And obviously working on invasive species is something that we all need to think about, but that's another part.
That you mentioned that, Jean, when we were setting up, trying to build a trail through Langhamer Forest, I think we ran into that. Gwen can speak to that because she talked with several people who live around there and their reluctance to have a trail go through because they saw it as their backyard, right? Am I right, Gwen? This is,
Initially, a few people were apprehensive. They were, using it themselves. One was teaching preschool and she used that woods all the time. And then we, explained the advantages. If you have these trails, it'll be safer. And then she seemed to be okay with it. And then another neighbor who had recently become widowed was more worried. I think the parking lot, she didn't know what was going to be going on there. And if people were going to be, drinking all hours of the night and making noise out there. And so we're closed at darkness. We have a sign telling people. So I think they're okay with it now. Oh, she was also worried about cars in her driveway, people mistaking where to park and going on her property. And I think that their fears were unfounded and they found that out over time. We haven't heard any complaints in recent years.
I think of the people who live on that little dead end road down by Diana's pool and what they go through. So I can understand why people would have that kind of apprehension because those people get parked in routinely. But I've been to your Langhammer property and I don't see that as attracting the same amount of people because it doesn't have the water resource right there. So,
right.
There are other aspects of the plan that, again, the Conservation Commission can have a huge role in, with getting people informed. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Let me skip over to here. Forests, riparian buffers, cold water habitat, doing more outreach to show where that cold water habitat is. Why don't I just, there you are. I'm going to share my screen, and as I flip through it, it'll help me to remember. When it does that. So here's the riparian buffers, and having an area that's undisturbed and another area that's a little bit more or less undisturbed, but you can have more gardens in that area, and then the rest of your property. There's different widths that are recommended, and that I can give you the booklet on that. Cold water stream habitat, which is something that we've been working very hard to document in the Natchog watershed because it's something we're losing in the state as more impervious cover goes in, more trees come down. All the things that are there to protect cold water in your streams are being attacked by various things. And then we have climate change on top of it, being the summer's really hot. And dry, but we still have really good cold water habitat in good portions of Ashford. If you look at this map, I don't know if you can see my cursor going up and down. This is the Mount Hope River. So the Mount Hope River itself, the lower part is not cold water habitat, and we worked on using data loggers that showed that, but you can see that the tributaries going into it are still cold, and that's really important in the summer when this main stem is too warm, that the fish can go upstream to stay cool and not get stressed. So learning about that and sharing that information and using that information as you're reviewing development is going to be important. Dams. These triangles all represent the dams that are known. They're registered with DEP. This is their dam database. However, that doesn't represent all the dams there are. There's a lot of smaller dams that aren't registered. Many of them are obsolete. So identifying where they are and if they are dangerous, I think is important, not only for the flood hazard they could be, but they also blocks passage of fish as they're trying to move to different parts of the river. So there might be opportunities to remove some of these dams, but you have to start with an inventory. Oh, it's real hollow. Culverts. This is something that is a common problem. There's culverts that are not designed properly, and the road goes over, they have to go over the stream. But when the culvert is like this, again, it's a hanging culvert, perch culvert, you can't get a fish through. There's shallow culverts and velocity barriers and debris buildups. And those things are things, there's an inventory that's been done on all the culverts on the main roads in Ashford, but we just have to go through it and decide which ones are really critical. And I think also working with the COG and your emergency preparedness person to recognize ones that could cause flooding and prioritizing ones that maybe should be changed. If it's a cold water stream and it's a hazard and, you know, it could put people's lives and livelihood in risk, you know, prioritize them, but use the fish habitat data with that assessment at the same time. Agriculture, you have a lot of scattered agriculture all around town, and there are water quality impacts from that. And what we're going to do to reach out to the agricultural community is something we still haven't decided, but we would like to set up a work group to focus on agriculture. You have a ag commission in Ashford, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to get them engaged in working on this. And if there's enough agriculture in the Natchaug watershed that we could apply for, you know, regional conservation partnership project and hopefully get some special funding brought in to work with them. And because you are upstream of the Willimantic Reservoir, they changed the cost share ratio for farmers now. And they also changed the income requirements. You can be a hobby farmer and still be available to get this funding. 90% NRCS can pay. Do people know this? That's something we need to let them know. Looking at your stormwater BMPs, you all know that the district worked at the Perry Hill Estates this year, and Gwen's going, yeah. Gwen knows exactly the storm drain because she was in the storm pipe. But the you know, they have dumpsters there, and the dumpsters were not maintained. They were leaking, and they were going down. The runoff was going down the driveway into Bassett Brook. So now these dumpsters are on code compliant dumpster pads. They drain into rain gardens instead of the roadway, and we put filters in the storm drains at the bottom of the hill. So hopefully the problems in Bassett Brook will have been taken care of. Floodplains. Do you have good floodplain protection rules in your town? You know?
I'm not sure. We probably don't.
I remember one time going into the Woodstock Town Hall and talking to the building official who is the wetlands enforcement person. And we don't have regulations in our wetlands regulations or zoning regulations about floodplains. We have an ordinance about it. And I showed it to him and he read it like he never saw it before. You know, what kinds of development you can allow in floodplains and what should be discouraged. You don't want to, again, lives and livelihood shouldn't be put at stake. The first responders shouldn't be put at risk to rescue people who live in areas that should not be built in. And those areas are really important for their natural diversity and all the other ecological services they you know, provide. So looking at the regulations and floodplain regulations, again, Janet, you said that you're working out regulations. These are regulations that, you know, could be looked at.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether what inland wetlands has. I'd have to look at that too.
Again, forestry outreach, groundwater. Gosh, you all get your water from wells in Ashford. And
Just about.
understanding that your water coming from a well and what impacts groundwater quality is something that we really need to be promoting. We did do a workshop from someone from the Department of Public Health talked about getting your wells tested. There is Groundwater Awareness Week. I will be promoting that on the social media that I set up for the Nat Jog. Are you all on Facebook, or if you do Facebook or Instagram? Naturally, Nat Jog is where I post a lot of things.
Oh,
So getting people to understand their responsibilities. Most people, they buy their house, they get the water tested, you get their mortgage, and they never get it tested again. They should get it tested annually. It was a little side story. The Department of Public Health, the State Department of Public Health, had a grant, and they were doing free water testing for two different things. One of them was uranium, and the other one I think was, I think, cyanide. Whatever. And I said, oh, well, they're going to need, you know, arsenic. Yeah. I said, they're going to need a control. I'll give them some of my good well water, because I know there's nothing in my watershed that would cause problems. And we had uranium, positive for uranium above the limit. And I never would have thought that.
Wow.
And so then they showed the maps, because they were getting all this data, and it's something that people need to be aware of. They should get their well tested at least once for uranium. We now have a reverse osmosis filter in our kitchen so that we're not drinking it.
But that's why you glow, huh?
I glow. Part about the drought. Do you have a drought management plan in Ashford?
You have a what?
A drought management.
No idea.
I don't.
Had a severe drought last year, and trust me, the brooks were dried up. A lot of them were dried
Yeah.
up.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, people's wells were drying up, especially people with shallow wells. They were having issues. So having a drought management plan is something the towns are being asked to do. And there are actually ordinances, model ordinances that you could adopt. You could tweak them, but this all has to be done at the local level. But I think the key points is you're not going to tell people they can't do something. You can't meter how much water they're using. It's going to have to be some kind of voluntary compliance. But if someone's well is drying up, should someone else be watering their lawn and having that water all evaporate up into the sky? I think there's just awareness that can
Right.
be done.
the town was asking people to let them know if they had dug wells, shallow wells last year, but I'm not sure what they were doing with that information.
I think that's important for the town to know. And there's actually an effort. Is that on here? Oops. The state water plan, there's a private well work group right now that's trying to develop a database about all these private wells, where they are, any information they can get about them, how deep they are, shallow or deep drilled wells, are they clustered and whatnot. So if there's ever a spill and there's a plume, they will have this information. They know where to go to tell people to start testing your water. But there's no database right now for all the private wells in the state until recently. They started keeping that information, and they don't have it in a searchable format. So that's an ongoing effort that I support. I think more information is better, just so that they can tell. I mean, I know that some people will be fine forever with their shallow wells, and then somebody moves in next door and puts in a deep drilled well and uses a lot more water and draws down the water table, and their wells no longer have water in them. So it's.
So Jean, do they,
Yeah.
do any of the towns have like you said, last year was especially bad, and Ashford actually set up a hose at the town hall where people could come and fill water containers. I ended up doing that several times. Do other towns have like a water distribution plan or anything for residents?
Goes town by town. I know that when we had that power failure this summer, you guys had a lot of power failures, so maybe I'm only talking about the one that impacted me. There was a multi-day power failure this summer after a storm of some sort. I don't remember the particulars, but I remember the power being out in like July. And my generator wasn't working, so I had to go to the fire department where they were set up to fill up your water containers. But it's not organized. More towns are getting emergency coordinators that I haven't seen before, but I think that's important for all the towns to have plans. Good God, with what's going on in Texas with that one mayor who quit, who told everybody, stop whining, you should have been better prepared. So you shouldn't be relying on the power that you pay for to come to your house if it's bad weather. You shouldn't rely on the natural gas that you pay for to come through the pipe because, whatever. But, go look up Colorado City, Texas. Just Google that and you'll hear about it. Anyway, it is important for the towns to have these plans and, so there is a coordinated response. I have not met our emergency manager, who's a volunteer and I think he's also on the fire department. Keep wanting to meet him to talk about the drought ordinance, but he's a busy person. So we're still trying to get him to come to one of our meetings to talk about these things. But yeah, there should be a plan.
Jean, when we were doing our certification, that we did have a community resilience meeting with town officials and a moderator and one of the things that we talked about is what is Ashford doing to deal with all the changes that climate change are causing in the functioning of the town. So I think some towns are starting to do some of that because of that being notified of, things aren't the way they used to be. And like you said, with the impacts of climate change, we're having to deal with a lot more issues, all across the board, all the things that you're mentioning, the health of the streams, what's happening when drought happens, what's happening with culverts, what's happening with, pollution going on and the bigger storms. And in Ashford, of course, if for most people, if you don't have any power, you don't have any water.
Right. And I don't think it takes more than the sun coming up for that power to get tripped in Ashford. I mean, I think sometimes I'm just amazed how often you guys are without power.
We've gone for 2 weeks without power and we have a generator, but if that generator should fail, I've just started stockpiling bottles of water in case that should happen. And my dad was a survivalist and he always stockpiled 2 years worth of food and water. That's a bit extreme, but I think maybe 2 months worth. People should really have all those plastic bottles that you get from lemonade or whatever. Those are good sturdy bottles. Wash them out, refill them with we have good artesian well water coming out of our faucet. I mean, I need to have it tested now that from what you said.
Bottling uranium.
Tastes great. I keep filling all these bottles. I mean, dozens and dozens of them. And if we all did this, if some kind of emergency happened, we would be prepared.
So, so when you said you're going for certification, was that under Sustainable CT?
Yeah, and that was a couple of years ago. We got the bronze one.
Doc is still working on it. We decided to join in, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
So
I know it's really hard with the pandemic.
We
have
haven't
to go to
decided,
another Zoom meeting.
we haven't decided to go to silver though. I think bronze did us in.
Yeah, it did do us in.
I just got reminded that we actually, our zoning does have a floodplain protection regulations.
Outreach on invasive species is something that would be a perfect role for the Conservation Commission. All you have to do is go next to the town hall and you can point at this and that. And maybe do a weed pulling day or something to get rid of that. So I don't have to trip over the bittersweet vines when I go down to the Mount Hope River.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Lakes and ponds. There are a lot of healthy lakes and ponds in the Natchog watershed, and they benefit everybody, whether you are a resident on that pond or a taxpayer in town that receives the benefits to the higher tax rates houses on lakes and ponds pay versus what you pay someplace else. So keeping your lakes and ponds healthy is something that benefits everybody. But the lake and pond associations really need to come together and understand they have a special responsibility as well in protecting their watershed and what eventually goes into their lake and pond to the best of their ability. I'm trying to get a grant to do a model outreach project. And if I get that grant, that model outreach is going to be shared with all the lake and ponds associations in Eastern Connecticut. So hopefully that'll happen. What I look at though is Mansfield Hollow Lake. And, it's a flood control project. It's not made for any other purpose officially, but it's got a great recreational value. And I look at it and I look at 164 square miles drain into this giant stormwater detention basin. So the health of Mansfield Hollow Lake is a reflection about how healthy the watershed is.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure none of you want to see that lake degrade. It's a beautiful place to go for recreation. And so everything we're doing upstream is going to impact that lake. And once that lake goes, then it's going to start to impact the reservoir downstream. Another initiative you could do locally is to kind of educate people about lawns and turf grass and their lack of environmental benefit. And this is where the pollinator pathway initiative comes in. If people would give up a small part of their lawns to put in native shrubs and pollinator, native plants, it has multiple benefits. One of them is clean water, because you don't need to fertilize native plants and you don't typically need to water the native plants except for when you're trying to get them established. So, and it also intercepts runoff if you plant them correctly, and then you get all these happy bees and butterflies in the yard on top of it.
Yeah, we're going to do some more about that this summer.
I'm thinking the Windham County Conservation Consortium would be a great place to have a talk about the Pollinator Pathway Initiative and get all the towns on board at the same time.
Oh,
Good idea.
yeah.
Windham has already passed an ordinance. So if you want to look at their model ordinance, I can get it to you. There are a lot of other pre-written model ordinances about this. Doesn't mean you must do, but it's promoting doing the right thing.
Right. Joshua's Trust is also involved in promoting pollinator pathways.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Doug Tolomei. He's
Yep.
an author, a naturalist, and one of his most recent books is Nature's Best Hope. And in there, he talks about thinking, people love national parks, but why not make your property a homegrown national park? And I think, wow, that's beautiful. The Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor with a homegrown national park in it. There's so much in there to get to brand this effort, whether we call it Pollinator Pathway or Homegrown National Park. I mean, Bill Reed and I are on the same page here. Getting that mindset to change. But at the same time doing this, I wouldn't leave, because there's quite a number of people that make their living maintaining lawns. So to go along with this, there would have to be a training component to give them more opportunities to do landscaping, but not on the back of a riding mower.
Yeah.
More creative work.
Well, my meadow is pinned on the pollinator pathway. So that's the Ashford pin.
Okay, I like that.
So what did when you talked about the Mansfield Hollow Lake, are motorboats allowed on that?
Yes.
Isn't that an issue?
You can't swim in it, but you can use a gas powered motorboat in there.
Yeah,
Yes.
really?
Yes. There's a training. Take advantage of any training you can get, whether it's Khaki Wick or any of the programs that Clear and Nemo. That's promoting this training, especially when you have. I mean, you guys have got a pretty steady conservation commission. I've been meeting with you guys for years. The same faces show up, but in a lot of places you get turnover, and making sure that new people have the same level of training. I really miss the Green Valley Institute. Some of you, Loretta's, yes, she's been around a long time. She knows about the Green Valley Institute. I tell people I'm a graduate of the Green Valley Institute. But there's still good programs out there. And don't forget that new people don't know what you know because they haven't had the benefit of the training that you went through. So continue to offer those training programs. And through the Natchog Healthy Watershed Advisory Board, we can coordinate this for multiple towns, on a continuous basis. And using the checklist, I already talked about that. This is one that I think is really important, and that's developing a regional open space strategy. Now, you all know about the Connecticut DEEP open space and watershed blah, blah, blah grant. That grant is now going to be, it's headed to being a matrix being developed to score properties for eligibility for that funding, because it's a limited amount of funding and they really want it to focus on watershed protection. And there's a committee right now that's working on making up this scoring rubric, basically using GIS mapping. And I made sure I got on the committee because the group that's spearheading this operation is in Fairfield County, and the watershed companies down there have really top-notch professional staff. They believe watershed protection means buying watershed land, and that's how they're protecting the water quality, by having class 1 watershed land that they own and know exactly. It's called zoning by owning. And up here in Northeast Connecticut, we have really small water companies, and they don't have the forethought to think that, well, the water could get worse. So they don't own any of the watershed above them. They are totally reliant on everybody else taking care of the land so that they have good water, and all they think they have to do is filter it. But in having an open space plan, so that everybody's not competing, but instead working together towards one goal, I think would be a very healthy thing in this watershed. I know Joshua's Trust has developed their own plan, and I think it pretty much matches what I'm thinking. But, there's 8 towns in the watershed, and, it should be thinking about protecting water quality for everybody and those special recreational places too. But it's going to be changing on how they score that grant going forward. So I'll do my best to make sure that we get something that's going to benefit us. Public access, you guys do a great job with public access. I love all the trails that you develop along the river, the Mount Hope River trails, and that's great. People will care for something they can use, and whether it's fishermen's easements, boat launches, hiking trails, recreation is one of the things that we have, I feel, is a resource that we are blessed with, and getting other people to appreciate that through Trails Day, Spring Outdoors, Walktober, is important. So they can understand, and you can narrate the importance of protecting these places.
Yeah, we're really lucky because not only do we have the state forest, but we also have Yale Forest.
Right. That's, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Last Green Valley is carefully recruiting activities for spring outdoors, smaller activities this year, 15 or less, outdoors only or online. Last fall, I did talked about my yard being on the pollinator pathway, and I had it staged so that people came in appointed blocks. So like only so many people could come at a time, and then they went on a self-guided tour, and then the next group came in. And so there's ways to do it
Oh, wow.
safely.
Good idea.
So, low impact development, that again with that checklist, and making sure that any new development has low impact development strategies, stormwater management strategies put in it is again something that really needs to be pushed more aggressively. And then work with private people to do these same practices on their own property, on their own, put in a rain garden, put in rain barrels. We've done lots of programs on these things, but keep the message going. And you can make your rain garden with native plants, and it's a pollinator pathway. So, I mean, there's like so many ways to blend these things. Again, riparian buffers and making wildlife, connecting pathways between preserved open space, which I think, right now we have it because the land's not developed, but if it's private property. So that's where the open space plan is going to have to focus on that too. It's all these wonderful things that use the riparian areas. Looking at your road networks and making sure that the Department of Public Works are using best management practices. Are they calibrating the salt dispensers, salt sand mix, whatever, as they spread them on the roads? Are they putting big piles someplace that's just going to go down into a storm drain someplace? Working to make sure all those things are done correctly.
Jane, have you had any success with talking with Public Works about, how they sand or what they put down or what they use? Several years ago, we did have someone come and talk with them, but I think it went in and out, without sticking much in there. So I just wondered, like in Woodstock, for instance, have you talked with the Public Works people, or even just as the ECCD person, have you had any success with getting coordination or participation?
Not as much as I'd like. How's that for an answer?
Okay.
When we talk about green infrastructure, if you can't use a standard sized giant truck with a plow in front of it to maintain it, they really don't want to hear about it, because if it involves hand labor, they want to avoid it. So it is an issue. And in Woodstock, we still have a lot of unpaved roads. We call them scenic roads, and we actually passed an ordinance that they can't pave them. And my public works director is not fond of the dirt roads in town and would like to have everything paved. So we have some differences of opinion, but
I would guess.
we still talk to each other. And in Woodstock, we have a salt storage facility for the state, and homes in the neighborhood near that salt storage facility started having problems with their groundwater to the point where it was not potable. They couldn't bathe in it. It was corroding all their pipes, corroding the interior of their dishwasher, their washing machines, their hot water heater. And the state had to come in and drill new wells. And
wow,
we still quite haven't figured out why those houses got that much salt in their wells. But the state mandates that they have to have the road down to pavement within 3 hours after it stops snowing. And they think the way they have to do it is use some salt. And that's something that is not sustainable.
Wow.
I'm sure you've heard some people think salt in private wells is our next crumbling foundations type
Absolutely.
disaster. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was talking with the volunteer coordinator at DEEP for water quality monitoring, and the state is developing a new volunteer monitoring protocol. They're going to do a pilot project this year, and we're going to help with it to look for chloride in water in streams. And we would expect to find it in streams in winter, but we're also going to look for it in summer, because if we find it in elevated concentrations in summer when streams are getting their water from groundwater, then it's going to show that there's a growing issue.
Ah.
I don't know the answers, but it is a growing issue. Septic system outreach has got to be continuous, getting people to maintain their septic systems. If you missed the workshop we did on that, that's also on the YouTube channel. But it's really hard. And I've gotten into arguments with people installing septic systems on my own property when I said, well, you're too close to the neighbor's pond. It's supposed to be 50 feet. No, it only has to be 25 feet. No, this is a drinking water watershed. It's supposed to be 50 feet. No, it doesn't. So it's crazy.
Wow.
So there needs to be better education and enforcement of the rules that exist.
How do we find your YouTubes?
Most of the programs I'm talking about, you can go to a link on the ECCD web page. I have to figure out myself how to tell people to get to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel. I'm not that good.
Okay.
But try to remember what we call it.
Is there a list there, Jean, of what is on you? So someone could go there and say, oh, I want to learn about stormwater.
We're working on revamping our website. We realized that it needs to get updated so that things are easier to find.
Mm-hmm.
But we will make sure that's going to happen within the next few weeks. But I can send you the link to the YouTube channel, and there's some of the programs that you have to be invited to look at, but some of them we just have open to anybody to watch. So
Yeah, because if we had that kind of a list, we could put that in our citizen as an educational thing to say, people, if you want to learn about septic systems, you could go,
awesome. That's great. I'll do that. Again, I put them up on Septic Tank Awareness Week. Oh yes, there's one of those too.
Right.
Goes up on Naturally Natchog.
Come on, get down.
Stream continuity, we talked about that, and dams, water resources, wetlands, protecting your wetlands. Training. Janet, you're on wetlands, you said?
No, I'm on planning and zoning.
Well, this is good for everybody, even though it's designed for wetlands. The DEEP came out with a really top-notch video series in place of the required 3 classes you needed to take to be a wetlands official and be on wetlands. It's on wetlands, and they're just done really well. So if there's nothing on TV, this is better than watching what most nights they offer on television. So I'll send you that link too.
Yeah, that would be good.
Can we all get that? Can somebody arrange to?
I can pass it along, Steve.
I mean, it's a great series that they did. I was really impressed with it. And there's a Natchog storyboard. All the links to it are on that storyboard as well. I should tell you about the storyboard. I'm writing myself notes. But the part that's really disappointing is wetlands, I think, is one of the agencies that tends to have the most turnover. And it's really hard to get the people on the wetlands agencies to go through the training. And they're trying to make it as easy as possible. And using this training program online is ideal to go through it. Here's your woodlands. And okay, who recognizes what this blue thing is right here in this map?
Lake Chaffee?
No,
No, it's-
it is a lake.
let's see.
We can't see what the roads are.
Oh, it's Mansfield
Yes.
Hollow.
No, that one is Ashford Lake.
Ashford Lake, oh,
Ashford.
Ashford Lake, which is on the border with Eastford. So the gray line is
Oh,
the
Oh,
town line. And the
okay.
green blobs are large forest blocks. So here you see Ashford Lake, and you see a lot of edge forest around it because it's developed. There's a lot of homes around it. And you see on the upslope on the eastern side is a big forest block. And so I put the map next to it with the parcel map on it. So here you see lots and lots of parcel numbers, meaning there's small lots around the lake. But then you can pick out that forest block
uh-huh.
and the little hole in it where those fields are. But this is what I was talking about with the woods versus the forest block. So this is a forest block, but because so many people have a piece of it, they don't think of it as a forest block.
Mm.
So educating those people about what their forest does to help protect water quality is important. And this is the biggie. We really need to get a advisory board going. We need people to volunteer to serve on it. I'm thinking with this advisory board, most of the watershed committees that we come up with, we meet quarterly and come up with an agenda. Start, working on, like I said, coming up with a work plan and a schedule and going forward and starting to get programs out there, coordinated programs to fit the little work groups that I think are important to set up underneath the advisory board. And I want to get that going as soon as possible. And once I get the final plan, I will ask the municipalities to all sign an intermunicipal agreement to support the plan. And we'd like each town to adopt it into their plan of conservation and development. And then serve on the advisory board and then keep everything public so everybody knows what's going on. There's nothing secret. This is a common approach the district takes once we write a watershed plan, is to develop a committee or a board or whatever you want to call it to actually implement the practices in the plan. So that's going to be, you'll be hearing about that. So I need people from Ashford, I need people from Woodstock, not just me. I need people from Eastford, all caring about the what we need to accomplish to protect the watershed, to keep it from degrading. It's there are some places that need work, but for the most part, the 74% forested part, 75% forested part is doing the work for us. It's just, but how much of that land is privately owned? So we're up to the will of the landowner as to how the land's going to get managed and making sure they know they have an important job to do is part of the mission that we have to move forward on. And that's basically the plan. And then of course that checklist, adopting using the checklist. So like I said, it's not regulatory other than maybe asking someone to do the checklist. That would be a regulation, but it doesn't cost anything. Doesn't say you can't do something. I know after Holly Drinketh finished the Natchog Conservation Action Plan, people in Chaplin were very motivated and they wanted to go right in and create a riparian zone and overlay zone on the Natchog River to keep certain development type activities out of there. And it was going along really well until someone said, wait, you mean I can't do this on my property? No, I don't want my rights taken away. And it died. They just, nothing happened. So I don't think that a regulatory approach for riparian areas is the right approach. However, there are other ways to entice people to do the right thing. One is to educate them so they know what's right or wrong. Using the PA 490 program to give people tax discounts if they don't develop the land is one of those tools that the towns already have available. So I know a couple of the towns don't have the open space. You're familiar with PA 490,
Yes.
Public Act
Yep.
490? So a couple of the towns don't allow open space designation under PA 490. They only do forest and agriculture. And with forest, you have to have a minimum of 25 acres. And there's the people with the woods don't have 25 acres. But if you gave them a tax discount on parts of their land, then they're not going to develop as open space. They'd be encouraged to do that. And they'd get something and everybody else would get something in return, which is protecting the water quality in the river. And like I said, a lot of work, but it's not hard work. It's just like making, organizing it, and lots of hands make light work, people working together. We can get this plan enacted. And, the sustainable CT is one thing we could use as well too. I can imagine how many points you get for doing some of the things that I'm recommending. I mean,
Right.
there's so many points in there, but it's, like I said, I'm really looking forward to DEEP finishing up their part of the plan.
Right. And once this is completed, it seems to me, Jean, that it would be important, or maybe you already have done this, of sending this out to Sustainable so that they can adapt some of these suggestions into, because they're constantly reviving their actions.
Yeah.
So that that would really help all the area towns as they continue to move forward on it. And it would help Sustainable CT to develop action plans that really help the waterways, particularly in our
Not
section.
thought of that. I will have to talk to the coordinators of that program, because there's so many watershed plans and watershed groups that already exist.
Mhm.
So that's a good point. Thank you for suggesting that. Like I said, you guys live in a really special place, and
Mm.
I think you realize that, but not everybody does. And got to get people not be afraid of bees or the wildlife that we have. Don't freak out if you see a bobcat. I think that's a
Oh, I wish. I'd keep looking.
They're on Facebook. I saw a bobcat. Bring your children in.
Well, Jean, I really appreciate your coming to the meeting and being so willing to come and share this, because it's been invaluable. And I'm just thinking about what are some of the ways that we can spread the word and educate people, because what I have seen is that once people start getting educated, their whole thinking process changes. And what before they were saying, no, I don't want this, they go, oh, I see. That kind of thing. Once you see a negative result, unfortunately, then you say, oh, wow. I mean, I had a landowner say to me, if I had seen this development beforehand, I never would have sold my piece, and it's like, well, yeah, but, you need to be aware of this and the value. And I think a lot of people in Ashford now do value the wealth of water that we have in our town, and also the wealth of forests, including the asset of having Yale Forest right there with all of the educational opportunities there. So there are people who take advantage of it, but there's still more to be done. And we're fortunate also in having a school that really tunes into projects. I know Steve has been very involved with the school in terms of planting trees. Last year, we had the students planted trees and stuff. So they're very open to doing things, and the rain garden, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the people who had their children in the school are also professors at UConn. So they've added their expertise and given that freely to the town. So yes, we are very fortunate. We have a lot of resources in our town with people, knowledgeable people, and also with excellent natural resources. But you've given us a lot of information, which I really appreciate. And certainly if you can compile some sort of a list or something with what you have available on YouTube, we can put that in a future edition of The Citizen, which comes out every month. So,
Or if we found a YouTube, one of your YouTube videos that is especially wonderful to share, could we share that via a Zoom meeting?
I've not tried that. Because like I said, it depends on your bandwidth. If you can stream something and do Zoom at the same time. I'm on Wi-Fi, so I'd have trouble doing that where I am. But if you're hardwired into your system, that would be a better bet.
Or I don't, is there any way to download any of them?
Might be able to.
So if we found one that was like, we'd really love to share, maybe we could ask you if we could have a copy, download a copy and then do it that way or something.
I always have to put it into an MP4 format before I can upload it onto YouTube.
Right.
Because that's the way they accept them. So I probably still all have them all. I mean, they're big files, but
Yeah, right.
I don't just throw them away. I have an external hard drive that I have them on. So that's another opportunity too.
Yeah.
I got better with editing video later. So some of the first things I did, I missed pressing the record button on time.
Yeah.
The transitions aren't as good, but
Yeah.
it was on the job training, like everybody else last year. But
well, I think it's a good resource. And as you go along and more are created, it's important to let people in our town, for instance, know that these resources are available. And so when they have an issue or someone like what Stephanie was talking about earlier, if they have a particular question, they may be able to look at one of the videos, which would give them some information.
True. And, the people who came to give these talks are really top-notch people. I absolutely love Andy Coleman from Skip's Wastewater Systems Service. He does an excellent talk on septic systems. He actually makes it interesting.
Yeah, it was cool. I heard that one.
That was a good one.
It was great.
So,
It made me deal with mine.
he made you deal with yours?
Yeah, which happened to be fine, but.
Okay. Well, I've had him do talks twice. And each time after he does his talk, people find out that if you have a water softener, you're not supposed to direct the discharge from the backwash into your septic system because the salt can damage the cement.
Right.
And when they find that out, they don't hear anything else. They just get really mad at the person who installed their water system. But it's something that you're not supposed to do. And I don't know why people are getting away with it, but if people know that this is, you have a septic system, you should know how to take care of it. And so I'm glad to be able to offer that to people, information on how to take care of their septic system.
You don't get a user manual.
Well, actually, we kind of have one-ish for a different project in Pomfret. We made a septic system file folder for keeping your records, but we printed all the surfaces of the file folder with information about septic systems, do's and don'ts, what not to put into your system, draw a map of where your leaching field is so you know you shouldn't do this, that, or the other thing on that area, that kind of thing. And if the Ashford Conservation Commission wanted to have them reprinted to give away in your town, we would be willing to allow you to use what we made. It's generic enough to go for every town. And there's
Oh.
a place on it where you can put the local health department, information on it, who to contact if with a problem.
Oh, that would be wicked cool.
That would be a great idea.
Would be.
A couple $100.
Very
to do-
useful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a, I would, if we had a live septic system workshop, I had enough to give away to the people who were signed up. But unfortunately, it's very hard to give those things out through Zoom. But it is something that's available to you if you wanted to print them and just give them out to people. I'll get you the prices on it. I just got a quote for how much it costs. So,
Right.
Cool. Excellent.
and I can send you the proof of it too, so you know what I'm talking about. So you
Okay,
can make a
great.
decision about that. I don't know what your budget is, but we did it in Woodstock. We were giving them out to people so that they would have an understanding about taking care of their septic systems.
Yeah, and that's sort of an original sin. So if you could hit something there, it would be really helpful.
And you guys have a farmer's market in town.
Yep.
So to me, that's a great place to outreach
Yeah.
on whatever day the farmer's market is.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, any
I
other
have a
questions?
question.
Mike?
Yes,
Okay.
are we moving forward with the education that you're doing? Like one time I remember there was a woman who was very cognizant of keeping the riparian corridor. She's right over the border in Mansfield. And then her next door neighbor did the opposite and it cut the swath of grass right down.
I
to the-
remember that.
And she was complaining. And then we remember there was no regulation, so we had to go through education. Did we make any progress with those type of people?
I've not gone back to look at Google Earth to see if that man let that grow in again. Yes, it was and if you look at the Mount Hope River from Google Earth, it just meanders.
Yeah.
So it's going to change its flow path. That's the nature of rivers. They don't always stay in the same flow path when there's no stones in the way. And so not developing in those areas is what you recommended. And this man just wanted to have a better view of the river, so he cut everything down. And I don't know if it went to lawn or not. I'll have to go back and look at that. What was her name? Tulane or?
Oh, we got to keep it private, but no, I just like in general, I mean, the pamphlets, are these people reading the pamphlets and rethinking it and saying, maybe I'll plant some native, this is important to have this riparian buffer. Or are they just going to always have that mindset? My property is more valuable with the view of the water.
You talk to somebody about reducing the size of their lawn and they'll look at you like you're evil,
Yeah.
so they've got a mindset,
Yeah.
that's aesthetically important to them. And I say, yeah, and in China, they used to bind women's feet and they thought that was the coolest thing. And it was damaging, they broke the bones in the foot and it was not a cool thing. But it's a fad as far as I'm concerned. It's one that we have to phase out.
Or mowing the world, mowing every field that isn't even necessary.
Mm.
So that's why I'm growing a little meadow in my yard.
Yeah, me too. My hayfields now.
Yeah, it's got a really nice resource in Ashford up by Leadmine Brook. I don't
Huh.
remember their name, but it's a beautiful meadow up there. And they let me walk through it, let me videotape it, and talked about having a meadow for a lawn. They get the great view of the beaver pond at the bottom of the hill, but they have to mow it, once a year? So why would anybody want more than that?
Really.
Really, exactly. Huh.
So, and then we documented Leadmine Brook as a cold water stream, and it really had an awesome diversity of bugs in it. So it's really healthy habitat. So it all goes together. You take care of the land upstream and the stream downstream is in good condition.
It's all connected.
Absolutely. But yes, I will be working on setting up an agenda and announcing the advisory committee meeting. And I'd like to see some of you involved in it because you're all good people. So,
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, Jean, again. We really appreciate
you.
this, and
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jean.
we'll be in touch in terms of, yeah, I'd like to get the prices for those handouts and everything.
I have a whole list of things I owe you now. So I'll
All
give you all
right,
the
good.
links that I promised you, picture of the folders, and then the cost of reproducing them and whatnot. So
Okay.
all good stuff.
All right.
It's already 8:30. You guys have the rest of the meeting to go. I'm sorry, I talked too long.
No, you didn't.
Wow, it
No,
was great.
not at all.
Thank
We
you
really
very much.
appreciate it.
Thank
All
Thank
right.
you.
Useful information.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay, good
Thank
night.
you, Jean.
Good
Night.
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 Okay, it's
Yeah, it
getting
was
late,
late.
so people are, and we've gotten a lot of information, so people are probably filled up. The only, I had put other things on the agenda just in case we got through quickly. But the one thing I just wanted to ask people about is I would like to put in to the Citizen this coming month of March, when we might be doing some or promoting trash cleanup. So my thought was maybe the last weekend in March and the second weekend in April, because the first weekend is Easter weekend. So I'm wondering how people think about that. And we don't know if we would just be doing what we did last year, just saying people clean up your streets and let us know which streets you've cleaned up, depending on what's going on with COVID and all that. So we probably wouldn't be doing what we've done in the past of gathering people together and everything, but just wanted to do a heads up and seeing who, if anyone has any conflicts then, or if that works for people, or if they think that's a good idea. I was hoping Pam would be here because she's the big trash lady. We always say when we get together, we talk trash. So anyway, but so that was what I was thinking. And the April one, it's not so critical, but I think to put it in for the end of March would help giving people a heads up about that and getting them thinking about that. Just thinking about cleaning up, because hopefully by then the snow will be gone. It better be, or else I'm gonna be like, so.
Oh, come on. It's prettier than gray and brown.
I know, but I'm hungry for spring. I really
well.
am, little things growing and all that, but yeah, I can't complain. I mean, I'm not dealing with minus 38 degrees. So,
Right, yeah. Or slush yet.
We're fortunate, right? Exactly. Does anyone else have anything that they wanted to mention? Because we can just, whatever we were going to talk about, we can put it over. I don't think anything is critical enough in March, to the March meeting. Anybody have anything? Okay. So why don't we just, well, good to see you, Christine.
I'm sorry, I got hung up.
Oh, okay. Well, you got here. That was important.
So you recorded this, so are you keeping recording?
The what?
The recording, you recorded.
All of the Zooms are recorded.
Yeah, where are they?
I think they're probably accessible to the town hall can access them.
Oh, okay, because I see her talk was recorded.
Yes, yeah, all of the meetings are recorded, so I think they have them on file or something that,
Okay.
I don't know who has access to that. I can check with Cheryl to find out.
Okay.
But I know I didn't know that the first Zoom we did, I didn't know that they're just automatically recorded. So,
We post them all on YouTube.
okay, YouTube. All
Yep,
right.
So
thank you.
Ashford has an official page. So once this recording is transcribed through Zoom, I post it and upload it, and there's a playlist for each commission.
Oh, great. Oh,
Where is the link? Where are the links?
I think you can get to it from the Ashford Town website, but you can also just search Town of Ashford on YouTube.
Really? Okay.
Wow.
Who knew?
all right.
That would be a good thing to have in the Citizen, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All the
All right.
time, all the meetings on Zoom are on YouTube. That would be a good thing to know.
All right, well, I'll put that in my little article, so. All right, everybody, well, have a good rest of the end of February, and we'll see you all in March, if not before.
Okay.
And maybe
What else, Sue?
April will be outside in our camp chairs at the town hall, or
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
boy.
allowed.
Can't wait to get off this Zoom and be in person, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
all righty,
Everyone.
bye-bye.
Take
Good
care.
luck getting your vaccine, everybody.
I got my shot last Saturday.